Tonight, only on India Today.
Hello and welcome to the News Unlocked, the show that goes beyond the headlines to the real stories that matter, to the stories that go beyond the noise of news. Today our focus is on what's been the big talking point of this week: elections in the United States of America, or should I say the divided states of America, because the world has been anxiously waiting for days for the US elections to be called and to know who has finally won the race for America. As different states have swung towards the Democrats, it seems that Joe Biden is on the cusp of victory. But the incumbent, Donald Trump, is simply unwilling to accept defeat. Counting is still on in some states and postal ballots are still being counted. Clearly, the United States is going to have to wait for a while longer before knowing exactly who will be the next incumbent in the White House.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
The stakes are high. The world is watching.
No clue about what makes America great.
As one country awaits the results of a nation split down the middle. The outcome has the potency to not just change the future of America, but impact the fortunes of the world. This is the final countdown that will decide whether Joe Biden can move into 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue or whether Donald Trump can stay put. On the other hand, have retained some of the traditional blue states such as Wisconsin and Michigan. The narrow margin and the increasing possibility of a Biden victory saw President Trump do something unprecedented. He became the first US president to claim victory even before the elections had been called.
Frankly, we did win this election.
That was not all that Trump did. He said that his campaign will be going to the Supreme Court to stop the voting after Election Day. By this, he meant counting of votes should stop. His campaign then went on to file lawsuits in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, and asked for a recount in Wisconsin.
So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop.
Meanwhile, Trump supporters tried to intimidate counting staff in Maricopa County, Arizona. The supporters were armed and were heard sloganeering. A few managed to enter the counting center, but were escorted out by local police. In a series of angry tweets on Wednesday, Trump claimed that the voting across states was fraudulent. But the tweets were soon flagged for spreading misinformation. Joe Biden's camp, huddled in Delaware, have remained calm, composed, and called for patience. Biden made it a point to speak to his supporters for the second consecutive night.
It's going to take a while. We're going to have to be patient until the hard work of tallying the votes is finished. And it ain't over till every vote is counted, every ballot is counted.
Whichever way this election gets called, Joe Biden has already become.
So as the battle for numbers continues in the United States, with Donald Trump in particular questioning the counting in several states, the fact is that Joe Biden is in pole position to become the next president of America. If Biden succeeds in winning against President Trump, he'll be 78 years old on Inauguration Day in January 2021. The oldest person ever to be elected the US president. He's someone who's been in politics for decades, who served as vice president to Barack Obama, and is someone who is seen to be a moderate centrist, just exactly the kind of person who may pull America away from the polarized politics of the Trump era. Here's a little bit more about the man who suddenly finds himself under the spotlight.
Joseph R. Biden Jr. With almost half a century on the national political stage, Joe Biden is all set to achieve a decades-long dream of winning the White House and becoming the President of the United States.
I accept this nomination for President of the United States of America.
But these are unprecedented times, not just globally, but in American history, as the nation battles a viral pandemic, a slump in economy, and a deeply divided society. Biden has sought to capitalize on his experience as a long-time senator and vice president, and cast himself as a steady and seasoned force in a chaotic and increasingly dangerous world. This wasn't Biden's first presidential race. In fact, this was his third. He first tried in 1988, but dropped out after allegations of plagiarism. He ended his second attempt in 2008 after garnering less than 1% in the crucial Iowa caucus. Within a few months, Biden embraced a new position.
Let me say it as simply as I can. Yes, I accept your nomination to run and serve with Barack Obama, the next President of the United States of America.
Known as middle-class Joe, Biden boasts of a record 4 decades in public office. First elected as a Newcastle County Councillor in 1970, he became the 6th youngest senator in American history when he was elected to the U.S. Senate from Delaware in 1972. Later, he went on to be elected 5 more times to the U.S. Senate. Former President Barack Obama has called him the best vice president America has ever had.
The best vice president America's ever had, Mr. Joe Biden.
International strategic experts claim Biden prefers alliances and collective problem solving, something which would mark a return of US to global alliances, a strategy that was dismissed in the Trump years. Biden, with his significant experience as a career diplomat, has claimed he has spent more time with Chinese President Xi than any other world leader, experience that Trump lacks. And thus, he will be able to mend the tense relationship shared by 2 of the world's biggest economies. So what will a Biden presidency spell for America and the world? The answer is yet not known. But as Biden asks his followers to keep the faith, so does the world wait.
Democracy is sometimes messy. It sometimes requires a little patience as well. But that patience has been rewarded now for more than 240 years with a system of governance that's been the envy of the world.
Now, the fact is that if Joe Biden does eventually become president, it will mean the end of the Donald Trump era. Remember, Donald Trump has been a US president like no other. Individualistic, unconventional, and unconventional president. Trump's 4-year rule has been marred with several controversies, much like the rest of his life, from walking out of climate change agreements to putting a ban on immigrants to declaring foreign policy on Twitter at midnight to sparking protests across the United States. Trump's presidency has been controversial for various reasons and not always remarkable. Either way, what cannot be denied is Donald Trump has left his stamp on the White House, and Trumpism may well outlive the 4 years of President Trump.
Donald J. Trump will probably go down in history as one of the most controversial presidents that the United States of America had ever had. Businessman turned politician, Donald Trump's first term as US president was marked by tumult and controversy.
America first.
Riding into power on a campaign promoting an America First message, his was a government which saw the emergence of new terms like post-truth and alternate facts. In a highly divisive world, Trump's presidency created deeper distrust and ethnic lines amongst news outlets and even climate crusaders. Trump survived an impeachment drama, and as he entered the final year of his first term, the coronavirus pandemic began killing hundreds of thousands of Americans and infecting millions of people, including himself.
I want everybody to be given the same treatment as your president, because I feel great. I feel like perfect. So I think this was a blessing from God that I caught it. This was a blessing in disguise.
Trump won the 2016 US election in an upset over Democrat Hillary Clinton, losing the nationwide popular vote by about 3 million, but prevailing in crucial battleground states that helped him amass an electoral college majority.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
From the beginning of his presidency, America had been roiled by protests. In January 2017, as soon as he took charge, he imposed a travel ban and pushed ahead with his plans to build a wall along the southern border with Mexico. This had a domino effect, with immigrants being detained and families being pulled apart.
People coming into the country are trying to come in. We're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals.
President Trump's first term in office came during a time of political polarization across America and dysfunction in Washington. He kept his popularity record undisturbed by record low unemployment and rising wages that helped the less well-off on the one hand, and the record stock market buoyed rich Americans on the other hand. One of the most contentious aspects of his presidency was the foreign policies the White House pushed through under Trump. He denounced globalism and focused American foreign policy around an America First worldview. He walked away from an international treaty over Iran's nuclear program and a global accord to combat climate change, reversed environmental protections, and rolled back warmer ties with Cuba.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
At home in the US, racial tensions simmered under Trump, with civil unrest flaring after incidents like the police killing of George Floyd, a black man in Minneapolis, in May 2020. Trump promised to maintain law and order. He called the protesters thugs and seemed to threaten violence, writing on Twitter, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts." He also sent camouflage-clad federal agents into the streets of Portland, Oregon, to confront protesters. Ever the showman, he proclaimed everything with the Trump label to be the greatest, the biggest, the best, the huge. Trump had teased about running for president as far back as 1988, and he had been registered in New York as a Democrat, an independent, and as a member of the Reform Party, before joining the Republican Party in 2012. The outsider Trump in 2016 vanquished a field of 16 major Republican candidates to win the party's nomination that gave him a shot at becoming the most powerful man on earth. And like everything else that Trump did, he went through his presidency with a lot of bluster, theatrics, and grand posturing.
And we will make America great again.
Now remember, the United States elections are usually a one-day affair. This time it's stretched out, and now with President Trump saying he will challenge the counts in several states, America is faced with a nightmare scenario of an extended period of uncertainty. At the heart of it, disputed ballots, lawsuits, recounts, and an election result which might be eventually decided by the US Supreme Court. The last time the United States witnessed an election which went to the court was 20 years ago. Remember Florida and George Bush versus Al Gore. Take a look.
Election Day, the day to choose a new president for a new century.
The 2000 presidential election had been unpredictable. Democratic Vice President Al Gore lagged behind Republican Texas Governor George W. Bush for most of the campaign. But then came what passed for an October surprise in those days. News that Bush had once been pulled over for drink driving in the 1970s.
Years ago, I made some mistakes. I occasionally drank too much, and I did on that night.
The polls tightened. On election night, TV networks started calling crucial swing states for Al Gore.
But I think, Bill, and you're the maven on this one, that generally networks do not call unless they have a pretty high degree of assurance, correct?
That is correct. We have a pretty high degree of assurance that Florida and Pennsylvania have gone for Al Gore.
But not so fast.
Stand by. CNN right now is moving our earlier declaration of Florida back to the too close to call column.
Then 4 hours later,
George Bush is the president-elect of the United States. He has won the state of Florida, according to our projections. 25 electoral votes. NBC News projects that George Bush, it's been a night of first giving it to Al Gore, then taking it away on the part of the networks.
Gore called Bush to concede, but as the counting in Florida got closer, again, Gore called Bush back and retracted the concession. The next morning, the result was still unclear because a lot of the ballots were unclear.
Vote-o-matic machines and conflicting rules about ballots and fuzzy rules about what is a vote.
It's slightly detached.
Democrats charge a confusing ballot layout led voters to think they were punching the ballot for Al Gore when they were actually voting for Reform Party candidate Pat Buchanan.
When the counting finished, Al Gore had won the national popular vote by over 500,000, but Bush led in Florida by 1,784 votes total. Florida law required a machine recount. That reduced Bush's lead to just 327 votes, but those counting machines couldn't read the presidential preference on 170,000 ballots. 60,000 of them were what's called an undervote, where the voter hadn't clearly punched through the box, leaving a hanging chad or a dimpled chad. The other 110,000 were overvotes, where the voter may have punched for Bush or Gore cleanly, but wrote in their name as well. Court cases flew thick and fast. Gore demanded a partial hand recount in counties he expected to do well in. Lawyers for Bush and Gore fought over those chads and the postmarks on mail-in ballots as well. As the deadline to certify the results loomed, the Florida Supreme Court ordered a statewide hand recount. Then, 4 days later, the US Supreme Court stepped in.
Get it in your mind, first of all, the Supreme Court of the United States has reversed the orders of the Florida Supreme Court on a very narrow majority, 5 justices to 4.
It was over. George W. Bush was 537 votes in front, and that became his winning margin, not just for Florida, but the presidency as well, claiming the Electoral College with 271 to 266 for Al Gore. It wasn't until over a year later that a University of Chicago study announced that had all 170,000 undervotes and overvotes been counted, Gore would have won by between 60 and 171 votes. It was still so close, but by then America had been attacked on 9/11 and had launched a war to oust the Taliban from Afghanistan, a war which continues today.
Now, among the many reasons why the US presidential elections of 2020 have struck a chord in India and have been so eagerly watched is that this election could be breaking a glass ceiling. That's right. Kamala Harris, the vice presidential nominee of Joe Biden, is of half Indian origin. As a result, prayers are being held for Kamala in her village. A special puja at her ancestral village in Tamil Nadu where they are praying for her victory. If Kamala Harris becomes Vice President, she will clearly have broken a major barrier. Take a look.
As the high-voltage US election counting continues, thousands of miles away in Tamil Nadu's Thulasindarapuram, people are praying for the success of Democratic Vice Presidential candidate Kamala Harris. In Tiruvarur, the ancestral village of Kamala, a special puja was held at a local temple for her success. The temple has Kamala Harris's name written on the wall. Her grandfather and other family members also have their names etched on it.
The trend will keep on changing, so I won't bother about that. I think Biden-Harris team will win in the end.
Kamala's posters have been erected on the roads and walls of Tiruvarur, and the villagers are hoping for her victory.
We really feel proud and we really want her to win the elections, because being the vice president of such a big country is really a prideful moment for the Indians itself.
Family is my sister. Family is my best friend, my nieces and my godchildren. Family is my uncles, my aunts and my chitties.
Remember, it was during her nomination speech that Kamala Harris invoked her Tamil roots by calling out to her chittis or younger aunts.
My aunts and my chitties.
Since she was picked as Joe Biden's running mate for the 2020 elections, Kamala Harris, who identifies as Black American owing to her father's Jamaican heritage, has amplified her Indianness more than ever before, speaking frequently about her Indian mother and family back home in India.
There's another woman whose name isn't known, whose story isn't shared. Another woman whose shoulders I stand on. And that's my mother, Shamala Gopalan Harris. She came here from India at age 19 to pursue her dream of curing cancer. At the University of California, Berkeley, she met my father, Donald Harris, who had come from Jamaica to study economics. They fell in love in that most American way while marching together for justice in the civil rights movement of the 1960s.
Fellow Indian Americans, too, are rooting for Kamala.
Your grandpa looks so much like my grandfather.
But no, I did see that. I did, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's that same person. Yeah. It's literally that same person. That is my grandfather. Your grandfather is my grandfather.
I couldn't believe it. I got chills.
In only a few hours, we will know if Kamala Devi Harris, the girl from Tamil Nadu, becomes the new Vice President of the United States. With Akshaya Nath in Chennai, Bureau Report, India Today.
That's it on this India Today special. An election like no other. The US presidential election 2020 will be remembered for a very long time. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
India Today TV, along with 7